Hello, and welcome to Friends for Life, a podcast of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod's Life Ministry. We're sharing the stories and insights of real people living out God's love for the people He's created. We hope you'll stick around and be our friends for life.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm your host, Steph Nuggebauer, along with my co-host, Deaconess Dr. Tiffany Manner. You're probably listening to this podcast because you care about life issues and how the church handles them, and no doubt are watching the landscape of our culture change very drastically, very quickly. One of the places these hot-button life issues really heat up is on college campuses. Joining us today is a current college student, Nicole Chappell. She'll share how college students can faithfully handle some of these controversial life issues through action and involvement in on- and off-campus outreach. Nicole, welcome. Would you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, hi, I am Nicole Chappell. I am a deaconess student from Concordia University Chicago, and I'm on my internship right now with LCMS Life Ministry. I'm originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Ooh, Hoosier,
Go
right?
Hoosiers. No Boilermakers, Hoosiers. I have an older sister and an older brother and a younger sister, as well as 3 nephews, the oldest of whom I'm a godmother to, so that's really special, and 2 dogs, both labs, both indoor, both meant to be outdoor.
Are they like the big dogs that still think of themselves as lap dogs?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, most definitely.
Oh boy, and there's 2 of them. So
There's 2 of them.
and you have 1 lap.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like you are a busy lady. Now, how long have you been on your internship with LCMS Life Ministry?
I think today actually marks 6 months, so exactly halfway through.
For people who don't know how this works through a Concordia and as you're doing your deaconess studies, tell us about when you started at Concordia and then what your internship year is like and then what happens after you graduate.
Yeah, so I started at Concordia Chicago in 2018, that fall, and I was actually an early childhood ed major with a Lutheran teaching emphasis. And then I switched my sophomore year, right before COVID, to the deaconess program. And then I did 2 years of field work through an RSO and congregation. And now I'm on my internship, and it's my final year. So it is a 5-year program. And then after May, I will graduate and take a call and be commissioned.
Wonderful. And can you tell listeners what RSO means and then where you volunteered?
Yeah, so an RSO is a recognized service organization of the LCMS. And I was doing my field work at the Shepherd's Hand Community Outreach Center in Fort Wayne. Then I was at a congregation in Chicago once I was back on campus after COVID kind of died down a little bit.
Okay. So, Nicole, here on Friends for Life, we talk about a range of life issues, and we recognize that when we talk about life issues, it's not just talking about life within the womb, but life at various stages of human development, different kind of crosses that people carry, and then how the church can address those. I'm curious, though, what is a life issue that you feel most passionate about?
That's a tough one. I think beginning of life is definitely at the forefront, but I think another one would be mental health, just because it's played such a big role in my life and in my family's life, and being a college student and getting through a pandemic, not just the pandemic, but being a college student is really tough mentally, and there's a lot that goes on. And so I think that's definitely up there too.
Now, in our previous episode with Reverend Dr. Leonard Payton, he also mentioned mental health as a life issue. And we had talked about how we don't often think of mental health as a life issue because there's a lot of big ones, abortion being one, end of life, physician-assisted suicide being another. Mental health is an often overlooked life issue and very under-addressed in our church. And so I'm glad that you brought that up, and especially on college campuses. And you made a good point, especially during COVID times.
I would say, too, that, really there's, with life issues so often in these circumstances when there's suffering and there's trial, mental health comes into play. When we're talking about beginning of life issues like abortion, there is no abortion that occurs without some mental health crisis accompanying it, whether it's what precipitates the abortion or follows the abortion and the trauma experienced. So, right, it's a part of so many of these life circumstances that lead us to focus on in life ministry.
Yeah, honestly, that's not something that is talked about, at least in the news or in secular culture. It's often shied away from to talk about the link between those two, but that could be a different podcast episode in itself. So, Nicole, you had mentioned those two were what you really feel passionate about in the life arena. What do you see as a college student being some of the other major life issues that you've come across as a student, and also some that you've been able to be active and involved in influencing?
So I think the first one would be gender, sexuality, identity, life issues, but not in the way that we generally, I think, approach it from life ministry, because there's so much pushback on a college campus. Concordia Chicago has a very large commuter population, and it's in a very big city. And so we face a lot of that pushback every day. And so it looks different in how we approach it as a Christian and as a Lutheran university. I think another issue is immigration and the refugee crisis, especially, again, being in Chicago. There were, stations set up downtown for refugees coming in. One thing that we did while I was on campus was host a refugee simulation through an organization that works in Chicago. And so we got to see what it would be like to be a refugee, try to get through a new country with no understanding of language, people trying to scam you out of every single thing you have, and everything that goes along with that. And it was definitely eye-opening.
I'm curious, what is a refugee simulation like? How do they simulate that experience for you?
Yeah, so we were divided into groups, and actually one group of us, we were kind of intentionally supposed to be bad guys, and we would be the ones that would take the money from the people and kind of yell at them and just not be helpful at all. And then the other groups of us, we were families. And so we each had a role to play in the family, and we were given a list of items, and we had to pick, 5 or 6 that we would take with us. And then they said, okay, your town that you're in is having air raids or something like that. So you have to get out. And so you basically just go on this journey. They had life rafts brought in that we kind of like blew up in the hallways, and we were like sitting on those, border patrol kinds of things, documentation in different languages. I mean, it was intense. It really was. It wasn't anything that I was expecting it to be, but it was a really great learning experience.
How long did that last?
I don't remember. I would say probably 2 hours. The leaders that were running it were educating us along the way about what it's like to be a refugee, what refugees go through, what happens after refugees make it to a quote-unquote safer place, and what life is like.
Now, I have heard of different college campuses doing a similar simulation type experience, not for the refugee immigration process, but for homelessness. It's another thing that I know, being at Concordia University, Wisconsin, they did for their students as well, offered an opportunity to experience one night. Obviously, it's not the full range of experiences that a homeless population has, but it is very eye-opening, a way to get a tiny window into the lives of other people who suffer in great ways that we might never know.
I think that's an interesting perspective. So college for me was a long time ago now, over 30 years ago. And we had some similar perspective broadening experiences. I was an RA, resident assistant, resident advisor, something. I don't remember what the A was exactly, but we would try and offer these educational opportunities to broaden the perspective of the students coming from a place where they might have lived in any type of town, it's a suburb or a small town or an urban center, but all they knew was their own experience. And so to help them see the experiences of others and broaden their perspective as college students. And it's a time where, you're taking what you've grown up with and your family of origin and what you've learned in schools in your hometown, and then you're taken into a new context. Oftentimes, if you're living on campus or if you've moved to a college, so it's a time of you're living out your values in a context where you don't have as many of the familiar points. It's different for commuter students who are local, but it's fascinating to consider, how is it for college students that they start to live out their faith, they're Christians, or how they might even encounter the faith if they're not Christians. But this perspective broadening, that's a whole nother topic probably for a different podcast and maybe another genre. But if it's helpful perspective broadening or if it's conflicting with our faith. But it sounds like the experiences that you're both describing at Concordia universities were really Christ-centered to help us have compassion and mercy for the people around us. Really stellar.
And I think part of our goal, I was hoping to create these events as part of our life team on campus. And our goal was to come up with ideas and address life issues that everybody can agree on as a life issue. Homelessness, we had a homelessness ministry that addressed the crisis in Chicago, and everybody can agree that homelessness is an issue that needs addressed. Everybody can agree that the refugee crisis is something that needs addressed, and it's not something as touchy as gender identity or abortion is. And so that was kind of our goal on a campus as diverse as Concordia Chicago is to find ways to unite people.
Oh, that's great. And what better way to unite people than around compassion, mercy, showing care for our neighbors. I love that you pointed out that let's find some common ground, some things that we can agree on, whether Christian or not, Lutheran or not. That is a matter of care for our fellow human being. Nicole, have you always been pretty passionate about life issues even before college, or was there a turning point for you in college where you thought, I feel called to make this part of my life's work?
Definitely in college was when it started to really take off and be a passion of mine. I grew up in the Lutheran schools, and so I knew abortion was wrong. And so that's kind of where it started on the life issues end, was with abortion. But it was never really talked about. It was kind of that inherent, pro-life kind of way of thinking. I went to Lutheran high school as well, and we had a pro-life team there that went to the march. In my sophomore year, I decided to go. Then there was a blizzard, and so I didn't get to go.
What year was that? Is there a blizzard every year?
2016. You were there, Steph, right? You lived out the blizzard.
I did. That was epic. Okay, 2016.
And after that, we kind of started changing leadership in the pro-life team with the students, and a friend and I were like, well, why don't we just try this out? Let's see what we can do. And we made it more educational based. So we talked about different things, the politics side of it, as well as the theology side of it, and kept going to the marches. And then when I got to college, there was a life team, but it was really only focused on the marches. And I had such a great time in high school that I thought, why don't I do this again? I'll take on the task with a friend and we'll work on this. And we started creating these events, and it was just something that I was always working on. It actually played, I think, a big role in switching to the deaconess program, because it was something that I wanted to do, not just kind of on the side. Like I felt that as a teacher, maybe I couldn't focus on pro-life issues all the time like I wanted to. So I was like, I'll just be a deaconess student then, and then I can do this as a job. And here I am as a deaconess intern with LCMS Life Ministry. So it worked out.
Yes. I didn't even time this. This is just happenstance that as you're mentioning the March for Life, we are about a week out from the actual March for Life in Washington, D.C., which is happening on January 20th. So I would love for you to share with our listeners your experience the very first time you were there and how that made such an impact on you.
Yeah, so I'm going to count 2017 as my first March, because 2016, we got to the church we were staying at, and we had to turn around, I think, the next morning. because we knew weather reports were coming in, and we were on buses I think we had 3 charter buses of high school students. And so they were like, well, we don't want to, have any liability issues, so we're just going to turn around. It was a little sad because it was it was going to be my first march. So my first time really marching, it was honestly very surreal. There were, tens of thousands of people, and we didn't specifically march, with LCMS. We were with our local group that we were sent down with, and it was crazy. I mean, there were people of all sorts of backgrounds. I think every background you could possibly think of. Some people were a little aggressive in their approach. I'm not an aggressive person, so I was kind of.
You're not?
I'm not an
I'm
aggressive
joking.
person. No, not at all.
You seem very meek and mild.
Deaconess Tiffany maybe at some points though would. No, I don't know.
No,
not aggressive.
Not aggressive. No.
Not aggressive. Yeah, so that was kind of a shock, but it was just really cool seeing people from all sorts of backgrounds, different walks of faith, atheists for life. You had scientists for life, and then there were people on sidewalks playing drums and trumpets, and it just felt like it was a huge celebration. It honestly was. Even though we were walking to end something, it was still focused on a celebration.
The celebration and that unity of this, as Nicole described earlier, this is something that we agree on, that abortion is egregious and it needs to end. I found my first march. I mean, the time passed so quickly.
Yeah.
It was like a moment out of time, but here we are with thousands of people, and we're working towards a common goal, which at the time was really focused on overturning Roe v. Wade. And Steph, you pointed out the march in Washington, D.C. is still happening, a national march. It's going to end now at the U.S. Capitol rather than the Supreme Court, because there is still vigilance required, because there could be national laws passed legalizing abortion for the entire U.S. So we need to remain vigilant and really advocate that federal legislation not be passed. But then there's also all kinds of state involvement, and that's why there's state marches too. So, certainly the national march is still occurring, but state marches happen all year round in communities and state capitals all over the country. So, it might be a little too late to plan a trip to Washington, D.C. if you're hearing us talk about what a great experience it is, but it's certainly not too late to find a march near you and get involved at some other point in 2023. Good New Year's resolution, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, good point. I think the latest one that I'm aware of happens in the later part of the spring in St. Louis. Is that correct?
There's one in late April in St. Louis. In the summer, we had May. There'll be June marches because the Dobbs v. Jackson decision came down in June, on June 24th. And there are fall marches too. Pennsylvania State March was in the fall. So I don't think we've had many in November and December. I think October was about the latest in the calendar year that there was a state march for life. We've got it on our website. If you go to lcmslife.org or lcms.org/life, you can see the marches where Lutherans are gathering together. And if you know of a march and you're planning on going, and you're an LCMS willing to convene a group, we'll add your march to the list, because we want to march together. Lutherans confess the faith, point to Christ, sing the hymns of the church, and we kind of are known for that. And people are like, "Oh, you're the singing church people in the march." Yes, we are. and we'll say the creed, we'll pray the Lord's Prayer. So it really is a time of great unity, and we lament too. There is an aspect to lament of all of these lives lost to abortion, and the hurt and the trauma that it's caused for so many. So we confess that and lament that together too. So all of it, though, is very precious, very important time together as the body of Christ.
And I don't want to gloss over this fact that, Nicole, at the time that you went, starting in 2016, but you had to turn around, but then went back in 2017, you were in high school still, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess take note, listeners, that these marches are for everyone at every age. And what a great intro into action, a lifetime of action to go in high school or even earlier as a participant. And really the point that we're making here with this is that age isn't really a factor in your volunteerism and in your activity in the life arena. And the hope would be that as you get older, you would become more active, more prayerful, more vigilant as far as what the life issues are of our current culture and how we can be involved and make an impact for the glory of God. And you had mentioned something to me just as we talked privately, Nicole, about how there is a feeling like no other to be gathered together with a bunch of other people, specifically your age, at this kind of event. Tell me, why do you think that was so moving for you to be there with other people your age?
I think a lot of it has to do with how media portrays people my age, and being very pro-choice, very, I don't even know the words for it, almost just against what we believe as Christians, against life in so many different ways. And it can be tough sometimes. I mean, even going to a Lutheran high school, I went to school with friends who weren't pro-life. And so it felt like we weren't really doing anything. And you just feel small sometimes. And then when you show up to the march and there are all these, 16, 17-year-old kids marching alongside of you, it's amazing. You don't feel so small anymore. You're like, oh, okay. Like, you meeting people from all over the country. And it's like, oh, you guys are doing this? Oh, we want to do that too. So like, let's, join together. Let's talk, let's network. And you just realize that you're not alone in this movement.
That's the blessing of realizing that you're not alone, being with all, seeing visually with your eyes, hundreds, thousands of people. And even though the life teams that you described in high school and in college, and I know maybe not your high school, but I mean your college life team and facilitated by Lutherans for Life, and this interaction with other Christians and Lutherans for Life has been great at convening these life teams and congregations and chapters, and so this gathering together is so important. It heartens us for the difficulty of walking in a society, in a world that is wanting to drown out our voices as pro-life Christians.
Yeah, just to echo what was written in 1 Timothy, to not let anyone look down on you because you're young, but set an example for other believers in faith, in love, in conduct, and in purity. After you experienced that march in 2017, you went back to life in Fort Wayne, and then what happened?
I think from there we really just said, okay, so what do we do now? What can we do in our community to make an impact, to let people know where we stand on life issues? And so we kind of got together. We had a small little group, but one of our members, her mom was a volunteer for a local pregnancy resource center. We decided to host a baby shower for them. We kind of put together some ideas. I'd been to a couple baby showers before, so I was like, all right, I know there are games involved. I had to figure out how to do that.
It doesn't have to be, I will say.
Oh, come on. They have the tray of all the baby items on it, and then they cover it up, and you have to name them all in a time frame. I mean, who doesn't want to play a game where you can, show how bad of a memory you have?
Right.
Who doesn't want to play a game where you have to try different nasty baby foods or change the diaper the fastest?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That game too. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So imagine high schoolers doing that now, and some of them have never held a baby. And they're like, oh gosh. Yeah. So that was fun. And we basically collected gifts and funds for this resource center.
Wow.
And we packed them up and we took them over, and some of us were able to tour the facility a little bit and kind of learn more about the work there. And it was really fun. And I took that idea and we had another baby shower at the life team when I was in college, for another local center. And so it's just something easy, I think, for high schoolers to do and to just have fun.
A nice way of collaborating the
Mm-hmm.
partnerships in the community. And a high schooler is not going to necessarily recognize that that's what's happening here. So, again, that joining with other like-minded, or I say this all the time, it's, pun intended, life-minded. We're with other life-minded groups. And so, it might seem like, oh, this is, a fun event, but there's some real depth there to we're not doing this alone. We're doing this with others. There's a real assessment of needs in the community and filling gaps and not duplicating things that are already being done and doing things that are unhelpful. So that's just a really wise way of going about starting out in life ministry and activism and pro-life efforts.
Yeah, and I think too we address that key point of we don't just care about the babies in the womb, we care for the mothers too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was, at least I hope it was eye-opening for some people who were there at the baby shower, who maybe they just went to get a cupcake, I don't know. But to see that, hey, we care for moms after baby is born too. And we are more than willing to walk alongside them as they, have their little newborn and they figure out what's going on too.
Yeah, it's not just like a one-off, here's some stuff for you, but no, that's where pregnancy resource centers are fantastic, because it's walking with moms for years and families and the families God designed, mom, dad, children, and supporting them. Yeah.
How impactful too for the moms that went to that baby shower, who at least some of them were probably your age, knowing that other women their age are there to support and encourage them in their motherhood. Oftentimes, when we think of pregnancy centers, we have this perhaps image conjured up of all retirees working or volunteering there, but the fact that there are young and old working together to support women, that's a really beautiful image.
The involvement with baby showers, but some other ideas. I mean, there are ways for younger children even to get involved in Pregnancy Resource Center. I mean, sorting diapers and helping with some of the material goods. I mean, it just depends. You have to reach out to the pregnancy center closest to you in your community to find out what their needs are. But even younger than high schoolers can get involved. I mean, oftentimes Definitely. They have a parent along, but yeah, no boundaries on ages there.
Yeah. And so now your time at Concordia University Chicago, what kinds of things have you been involved in?
So when I first met Nicole in the flesh, we had Zoomed, because it was COVID. So we had Zoomed and had some conversation about life ministry, but I got to visit her in Fort Wayne at her field work, the now recognized service organization, Shepherd's Hand. A lot of our recognized service organizations that provide what we would say life ministry are a variety of stages in life and support the family as God designed the family to be. And so that's an area where I got to actually watch Nicole in action. It was a health fair, right? Remember that?
Yes.
Also snowstorm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was February.
Yeah, it was not
theme snow. Yeah. And so there was some beginning of life help, but I mean, so Shepherd's Hand, as a recognized service organization, has a tremendous emphasis on, I think, after school programs and helping families with nutritional needs and some education.
Yeah. So when I was there, at least, it was still kind of iffy on what could be done because of COVID. But the health fair was a big one. We did a health fair with the diaper drive. And so we collected so many diapers. Like, we ran out of room to store these diapers.
It's a good problem.
And so we would package them up and we'd put a little card with like a prayer or a Bible verse in it. And then with the health fair, we had local resources come in. And I mean, this isn't a part of Fort Wayne where it's very diverse, very low income. I kind of call it the other side of the tracks, kind of an area. Not all legal citizens. Many of them don't speak English. Some of them even from an Islamic background. The church, opened their doors and said, let them come in. If we're able to bring all of these other community resources together and be, the hands and feet of Jesus here and be kind of that meeting place for people, then let's do it. And so we had probably hundreds of people, I think, come in.
There were hundreds.
Even during a pandemic. I mean, there were people in need of things that they honestly probably couldn't get because of the pandemic. And so we said, here.
In Contact, there were community health providers providing them some advice and maybe some childcare options, for moms and dads who had to be employed and find things. And, it was a time where they couldn't have necessarily gone into someone's office, but then this fair held in the church, they were able to, all very safe. We were masked.
Mm-hmm.
But combining, it's care for body and soul. The pastor, the vicar is there. I think there were 3 of us deaconesses. I mean, I was just kind of showing up. I was the outsider observer. But Christ's people clearly identified as the people of God, who they're serving in His name, and that connection to the Word and Sacrament ministry with connection to the church and the prayer needs and these ongoing relationships that can develop. So again, it's not just a one-off, but engaging in long-term relationships that through the programming there and connection to the church. I mean, it was just really beautiful.
It was, yeah. And when it was warmer and we had another one, we had even more people, I think, show up, which was really nice. And it's just a great way to, start forming those relationships with the people in the community.
And there you said it too. A lot of this stuff, a lot of what life ministry is outreach on a very local community level. Family nights, health fairs, tutoring after school, providing diaper drives for mamas. These are all touching on life issues and all care for the fellow person who's made by God and for whom Christ died. You make it sound easy to get involved in life ministry stuff, but I would tend to say that people your age feel pretty intimidated by starting to get involved. What do you think are some of the biggest obstacles when it comes to younger people, college-age students getting involved in pro-life ministry?
I think there's this kind of notion that you'll be looked down on, or there's going to be pushback from peer groups if you outwardly say that you're pro-life and you're vocal and you're doing something about it. And it can be scary. It can be scary to to do new things. I'm still scared when I do new things. So,
as am I.
Yeah.
That sometimes doesn't change.
It doesn't go away. But I think remembering that we have a calling in this life as Christians to stand up for life, to confess life, and to be a witness, whether that's volunteering at a health fair or diaper drive, whether that's babysitting the kids down the street because, mom has to work late or something like that. It can just happen in so many small ways. And it really is. It's a scary first step, but once you do it, so many doors open. And you see so many other opportunities to serve God's people.
I think also as Christians, we are empowered by God and through the Holy Spirit to do these hard things. I mean, Emmanuel, God with us, we would have just been hearing about the birth of Jesus and then many names for Jesus not too long ago. That's what Emmanuel is, God with us, and He's with us in these hard things. He's the one who strengthens us to do it. And for us Lutherans who rarely get to partake of the Lord's blessings in the sacrament, remembering our baptism daily and receiving the Lord's Supper in the divine service weekly. I mean, that is what strengthens us for this work that we get to do, the way we get to share His mercy and compassion. And if we can get in our heads about it, that's where fear can take hold. And so it's really that connectivity to the means of grace and the word of God that can enable us to do these things.
Gives us courage, sustains us. What is just one point of encouragement if we're just wanting people your age to get involved? Where do you start?
I think you start with your family and your community. Start at that small level, because a lot of times those are the needs that can be addressed, that you can address. I mean, you can't just magically make state laws happen or something like that. It really takes work at a small level, and then that builds up as a grassroots kind of a way to say it. I mean, you just start at that community level and find where the needs are, address those needs as you can.
loving your neighbor, right?
Yeah.
These vocations. Steph and I end up talking about vocation all the time on Friends for Life. But you just described it so perfectly, Nicole. It's like looking what's right around you, closest to you.
Yeah.
Who's that neighbor closest to you?
Yeah. I feel like sometimes it's so easy to overlook that. You
Mhm.
want to dream big and you want to do these things, but there's someone next to you who is hurting or suffering from, whatever it is. That's who God has placed in your life and God has called you to serve.
Beautifully put. I can see that Concordia education really paying off.
And probably your baptismal faith too.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. I would say, just looking back at my time as a college student and how I feel I've grown since then, at that point in my life, what would have made it easier for me to get involved in life ministry is to grab a friend, because I wouldn't have done it myself. But if you can haul a friend along with you to volunteer at a pregnancy center or tutor children after school at a church's after school program, that makes it a lot easier when you have a buddy. And go to your pastor, go to your campus pastor, go to your deaconess and ask, I'd love to get involved, but I don't know where to start. Go to lcms.org. Tiffany, where can we reach out for volunteer opportunities?
Sure. Life Ministry at LCMS.org. And also, a really great starting place are our recognized service organization. I mean, we've mentioned a couple of them. I mean, Lutherans for Life and doing such great work with forming and equipping life teams and for teens at high schools and colleges. And, Nicole certainly interacted there at a young age with life teams and also, Shepherd's Hand, which is, local to people who are in Fort Wayne. But there's a lot of recognized service organizations involved in life ministry, because life ministry spans, conception to natural death. So even our recognized service organizations with senior communities and care for people who are older, you can find the directory on lcms.org/RSO for, stands for Recognized Service Organization. But there's, community partners that your church, your congregation may have. And stuff like you said, talk to your pastor, your deaconess, DCE, Sunday school teacher, and find out who is it that your church has been working with locally. Certainly we're here at Life Ministry at lcms.org to help you brainstorm, think about some ways to get involved and speak up for and get active in for life efforts in your community.
So just in closing, I'm going to ask you both the same question. Nicole, what is one thing that you've learned from Tiffany working with her in the time that you have in life ministry? And Tiffany, what is one thing that you've learned from Nicole working with a college-age student in life ministry? How have you learned from each other?
I feel like I learned so many things from you related to life ministry. I think you have really reinforced in my life a baptismal identity and an understanding of the sacraments. I think those are the things that you've really kind of always reemphasized and always brought up. And so I feel like now I'm starting to do that too. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's because my supervisor taught me that. And it's really great. And it's good that I keep that at the forefront of my mind and not just kind of an add-on.
Tiffany, what an awesome compliment.
That's about the best thing anyone could ever say about me.
Yeah.
Wow.
What you're just saying is that Tiffany is constantly reminding you of your baptismal identity, and that identity propels you forward to serve and to be on the lookout for how you can serve other people. It's beautiful. So Tiffany, what have you learned from Nicole and I guess in a sense the people involved in a younger generation? What have you learned from her about life ministry?
Oh, I have been so impressed with Nicole. And, I've known her now a couple of years, knew her before I got to work with her as an intern. And as we've been involved in each other's daily lives, it's just been such a tremendous blessing. And it's hard to pick one thing. But, I will say Nicole has continually inspires me to the involvement in individuals and learning how, while we all agreed earlier, she's not aggressive. And I think that's a good thing. But the way that she relates to people and how people respond to her is so wonderful to see. But, for me to learn too from some of those practical experiences that she has had and the way she can articulate and work with young people. I mean, she's just a fantastic teacher. And as I've watched her interact with teens and other people her age, she relates so well to them. And I'm learning from her, watching that. And she grew up in a different world than I did. For her to confess the faith so well and live it out in action, this compassionate, diaconal love that she showers upon people. That when I was Nicole's age, I was not doing that. I did not understand that. So it's heartening to see and for me to learn from, and hope that my granddaughter gets to be influenced by people like Nicole and the younger generations as well. So I probably touched on a lot more than one thing there, but that's what I'm learning from Nicole is watching this life of diaconal love and action.
Thank you, Nicole, for being my guest today. And thank you, Tiffany, for being my co-host. They're always my favorite episodes when you get to join me. So thank you, too, for being with me today.
It's been so great to have this conversation and to be together.
And thanks to our listeners for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a review. And don't forget to click the follow or subscribe button so you don't miss out on upcoming episodes. New episodes drop twice each month. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram as Friends for Life, LCMS. And finally, listeners, we want to hear from you. Do you have an idea about a guest you'd like to hear from or a topic you want talked about? Email us at friendsforlife@lcms.org. We want to hear from you about what you want to hear about when it comes to issues of life.
Thanks for joining us. Friends for Life is a podcast that introduces listeners to life issues by introducing them to friends who stand for life.